Hi, my name is Michelle V. I'm 29 years old and I currently work at a tattoo studio in Denmark called Kineone. My style is abstract realism. There is art and there is tattoos. And the one thing that separates them for me is that in art, you always see that glimpse of the artist behind. I remember my dad had this book by Vestergård, this amazing artist who draws fantasy and women who writes dragons and stuff like that. And I was so fascinated by this book, so I would sit there and draw these women for hours and hours when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. I think my dad saw some kind of potential in me, and he started to encourage me to try out tattooing. And when I was 14 years old, I finally gave in and I tried it out. To be honest, I was doing really shitty tattoos at home. I had never had anyone who taught me the proper way. I didn't do the whole apprenticeship, and I didn't really know what the whole industry was about. I didn't know what convention was. I thought that the whole industry was just like people not wanting to share any knowledge, keeping it all to themselves because it was so sacred for them. So I was just at home by myself, and I had this idea that if I was doing it again and again and again, at some point I would get better. But I never really got any better. It was just the same mistakes made over and over again. But at some point I got offered to work in a tattoo studio. My work definitely improved from the fact that I did tattoos full time now, but I still wasn't happy with the work that I was doing. At that same point in my life, that was when I started noticing those young artists coming up. They were the same age as me, but they were just flying through the roof. They were so amazingly talented, and I couldn't really wrap my head around what did they have that I didn't have. In 2010, I met my husband. And shortly after that, I became pregnant at the age of 22. This by far was like the most bizarre time of my life. I was so confused about like who I was, because tattooing consumes you, it becomes you, it's your hobby, it's your life, and motherhood does the same. And it seemed like at that point, there wasn't time to do both. So I was sitting there at home with a baby in my arms, looking at these other artists who were just like going through the roof, and I couldn't do shit about it because every time I was with my daughter, I felt guilty that I wasn't putting the time into drawing and tattooing as I wanted, and the other time when I was tattooing, I felt so guilty that I wasn't with my daughter. I fell into a depression, a really bad one, and it affected my marriage to the point where we broke up several times, and it was by far like the lowest point of my life. So when I started getting back to tattooing, I knew I had to do things differently. So I started going to conventions as a guest, looking at other artists. I started finding all the seminars that I could, going to them, and just soak up as much information as I could from these amazing artists that there is around as well. I started actively seeking out other artists from other shops, connecting with them, trying to get as much information and stuff like that out of them. And that really helped me out. People had so much to offer, and there was so many things in this industry that I had no idea about. Like I didn't know what Photoshop was. I didn't know that there was rotary machines. All of this stuff really helped me out. I could definitely see an improvement in my work, but at the same time, I was focusing so much on my career that I wasn't doing anything personally with my marriage and with me and myself. So I was still at this dark place. So this is when I personally had maybe the biggest breakthrough, because at this point I started doing designs the way I was feeling. I started drawing stuff that came from my mind. And I think that maybe because my mind was at such a low point, the emotions really came through. This is when people really started noticing my art, and I was getting recognized for the stuff that I did. So many people saw me as this overnight success that just came out of nowhere. But in fact, they had no idea the stuff that I went through and what I had to do to get to that point. For me now, tattooing is my personal way of expressing myself. I love the fact that I can put my feelings and what I have inside into art, and that helps me on a daily basis. If I could go back in time, I would definitely tell myself not to be so afraid of taking chances. But to be honest, I wouldn't change anything that I did, because it all got me to the point where I am now. But I wish I would have done it sooner. I'm Michelle V, and I'm forged by myself. Thanks for listening.